oh shoot, I'm gonna be over 50. So what can I start doing in my own life? My sister's moving back, building her final home on my grandpa's property. And it's like, okay, we're gonna plan for these. We're gonna plan for the aging in place scenarios as much as we can.
Lights, camera, action. We're back for your satisfaction from Action Business Furniture Studios is where it's happening. We have a special guest star appearance today from Heather Bryant. Yay! Give it up for Heather Bryant. Isn't that great? You should all be liking this video and subscribe. And now, your host, Jonathan Byron. Take it away, John.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Hi, everybody there in Facebook, YouTube world. We're glad that you are all here. We have a very full room today, and I'm super excited about that. It is all your fault, James. I know it. I can sense it.
They thought I wasn't coming. So.
Yeah, we were all like, all right, yeah.
He's gone.
All right, sorry, everybody. We made a mistake on the invite card. Somebody told James. So we're going to jump right in. We don't have a lot of time because we have a lot of voices. We'd like to hear everybody's voice. So we're going to get into it with some introductions. Heather, I'm going to skip over you because you're our guest, and we'll kind of jump into who you are and why you're here in a little bit. Rob, I'm going to jump over to you first, and we'll go around to your left.
All right. Yeah, so Rob Reuter with Didic Designs, better business technology by design. If you're struggling with your choices and getting productivity and efficiency, I'd love to have a conversation with you. Love to sit down with business owners.
Excellent.
I'm Zane with Zebra Go. So we specialize in helping small business owners with answering phone calls and making sure they're not getting missed. Right now, and don't trust this statistic, but it's out there, 70% of small business owners are, or 70% of their calls are going missed. So if you want to stop missing calls, we can answer those for you and get them on the schedule.
Perfect.
I think that might just be a Spokane thing.
I remember I moved here the first time, and I called all these agents, these real estate agents, and nobody answered.
Oh, we don't answer our calls.
It's summertime. They're at the lake. I'm like, what? And then you go through a winter and you understand why. I'm James Kettner. I own J2K Sales Pros, JMK Connections. J2K Sales Pros is basically business development consulting, sales coaching to get your closing ratios higher and your cancellations lower. And then JMK Connections is a TV and film music licensing company. And I'm in talks right now with podcasts. So always listen to Jonathan, me second, but yeah, that's my
I'm Mary D. Albrecht. I have Bach Avenue Virtual Services. I can do admin, online virtual admin work. I also do video editing. I am also open to any, if you need front desk support on site. So I'm in there, and come talk to me.
Excellent. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Gary Canavello, and I don't know what I'm doing here because I'm an opera singer, but as far as that goes, anything else? Well, I'm an actor as well, but
And what did you calligraphy?
and I do calligraphy. But I'm unemployed too right now, so I'm gonna be homeless pretty soon. So let's
So for all
leave it at that.
everyone's calligraphy needs.
Yes, unless you need some writing and
tattoos,
You know.
or just writing.
just writing.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's me.
All right. Well,
I'm glad you're here.
Glad to be here.
Lisa Miller, I'm an arbitrator and private judge. I do our Lisa Miller's Legal Minute, and somebody needs to start the clock.
okay.
All right, take a pass. So, we have 5 cases for consumer protection that we're monitoring for small business. Nestle is in trouble. They misrepresented the ethical sourcing for their cocoa beans, and they're in big trouble. I know. Why would we buy Nestle knowing that they're using these child labor and all kinds of offensive? We have lots of choices when we buy chocolate, right, and other treats. So they're in big trouble for misrepresenting that. In addition for doing it at all. We are looking at USC, University of Southern California, is also in trouble. They misrepresented their online Master of Social Work program, saying that it was the equivalent of their in-person Master of Social Work educational program, charged the exact same tuition, and then you got much, much less. Much less access, much less placement assistance afterwards. Really significant lack of support. Then Amazon is in trouble also.
Shocking.
I know. First time ever, right? They use deceptive enrollment tactics to get you to sign up for Prime. And they use something called dark patterns and deceptive design to make that happen. And then last, Apple is in trouble. Apple
Also shocking.
said, right, it's for greenwashing. They said that their Apple Watches are carbon neutral, and they're not. So they're in trouble as well. And we have a tendency, I think, to think to ourselves, take a pass. We have this feeling that these giant corporations are in trouble for their issues and our issues are separate because we are small businesses. But does anybody remember when all of a sudden all of our websites were non-ADA compliant? That wasn't because of a small business. That was because the FTC went after big business, found out that all the websites were not accessible to people with visual deficits, and now all of a sudden we're all in trouble. So these big cases do have a very direct trickle-down effect, and I will be monitoring all of these. But it's just sort of the thin edge of the wedge. There seems to be a lot of interest in consumer protection, unfair competition, and it is going to affect businesses large and small. And also I wanted to remind everyone, I am running for City Council, position 1. And if you would support my candidacy, take and pass, I would really appreciate your support. I'm running on a 3-plank platform. Support for law enforcement, for public safety, fiscal conservatism and responsibility, sharp eye on the bottom line, and support for small business. Small business is, I think, the backbone of the economy here in Spokane Valley, and I think small business needs a little more love. So, Lisa Miller, position 1, asking for your vote.
All right.
How long was that? What did the clock
So
show?
the legal minute was 2.5 minutes. Still, you did good. You got 5 cases in 2.5 minutes. We'll give you some slack on this one.
Do I get a minute or do I get a couple seconds?
You get whatever
No, I
you need.
don't
Introduce
feel-
yourself.
Okay, you're already done. Next person.
Lisa took all your time.
Sorry.
Matthew
Not
Guzman-
sorry.
No, not sorry.
No.
Matthew Guzman with NILife Securities. I work with business owners as well as everyday families to make sure they're protecting who they love and what they love, make sure they're planning for the future. I don't have any cool things to share, unfortunately. So.
I'm Diana Wilhite. I'm former mayor of the city of Spokane Valley. And
The first mayor, right?
no, I was
No?
the second mayor. I own a company called Wilhite Enterprises, and I do political consulting. I do editing and marketing. So,
Awesome.
I
Welcome.
didn't know you did editing.
oh, yes, that's what I do with you.
I love it.
Spicy combination.
I need me some editing. Thank
Yes,
you.
yes.
So I would say editing extraordinaire.
Oh, thank you. So,
My name is Grace McGowan, and I work with Form Architecture, and we do a variety of different buildings, but we believe that every design we cater to allowing people to have their space be developed in art.
Awesome.
I'm Mike Christensen. I'm the owner of Form Architecture. It's my first time here, and we just thought it'd be kind of interesting to come by and see what's going on. So
Excellent.
that's what we're doing.
Happy to have you guys. Thank you.
Cool. Kirsten Bukes. I work for ESD 101. And one of our big programs we run is called Hope Squad, which is a peer-to-peer suicide prevention program. And so Zane was gracious enough to invite us. His wife is a Hope Squad advisor at one of our schools. So really excited to be here and talk about youth prevention.
Awesome.
I'm Reese Bauer. I'm also from ESD 101, and I'm a Hope Squad advisor out at East Valley Middle School.
Excellent. Welcome, guys. Glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, cool. I'm Kelsey Hines with Naomi Kwan Agency. I do home and auto insurance, and we just care about you and care that you're educated in insurance, and yeah.
All right. Welcome. Thank you. I always hesitate to invite Mike up.
We wanted the show to catch fire. That's why we brought the Cybertruck. The Cybertruck is really cool. Check out how cool it is. It's so durable and rugged, and it was getting all this awesome B-roll. Be sure to check it out and comment about how amazing the cinematography is.
Thank you, Mike, for not saying that this episode was brought to you by Tesla. I am Jonathan Byron. I'm a realtor here in Spokane. I love helping people navigate what can sometimes be a challenging almost even treacherous journey of home ownership. And I've actually got clients that are getting ready to close, and we hit a little bump in the road this week. And with my team, we were able to take care of it and get them back on the road. But the big thing is communication and really understanding what it is that you're getting yourself into and up against. So if you know anybody that is thinking about buying, thinking about selling, I'd love to sit down and have a conversation with them. Right now is a great time to buy. If you are renting and you have a good income, there's a really great opportunities to get into home ownership for really very little money down, and really some great deals on that market right now. It's just
What's
kind
the
of
market rate?
the market rate. So I am not a lender. I partner with some lenders, and really there's a lot of variation that goes into your score and what your rate would be. And then also day to day, it fluctuates quite a bit. So they handle all of the wizardry on that side, and then I help you find the house and negotiate a really great deal. So that's a little bit about everybody here and our special guest.
Something let's do make a shout out. We're broadcasting from Studio 1.
Yes.
At Action Business Furniture on East Sprague and Park. And we encourage everyone, we want to fill this space and have it. So we're excited everyone made it today, and we hope to have this continue on as we go through the summer.
Yes, excellent. Thank you for that. And also, when you said that, it reminded me, Dave Ribble is well on the road to recovery. He's feeling a lot better. He just couldn't quite make it today, so we're really hoping to have him back next week. But Dave, shout out to you and Standout Mastery. So if you're at all connected with that, shout out to Dave. We love Dave. Okay, Heather, tell us a little bit about you and Tanglewood, and then we'll jump into our topic.
Yeah, Heather Bryant, founder of Tanglewood Concepts. I'm a construction project manager, really taking what I say the tangled up concepts of design and decor and really creating executable plans. My passion is planning the project before you execute the project so that less money is wasted on change orders and everything else. I love working with small businesses. That's my passion, to go work with tenant improvements on a smaller scale. I've done some big projects. I've done some really cool revitalization projects with my former employer here in Spokane, and I'm getting back to that because I love it and I love seeing a space transform. And same thing with homeowners. I've done a couple of projects where, like, mudrooms and making the space and the systems work for the homeowners. So that's my biggest passion. So just fills my bucket.
Awesome.
And that's what I'm after. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I kind of have a lot of different directions that I could see this going, but I want to start with where you and I started talking about what, as far as the aging in place piece, what was that pivotal moment for you? And a lot of people weren't part of that early conversation, so maybe give us just like the Cliff's Note version of what you went through and how that led you kind of on this new journey of discovery.
Kind of focus. So yeah, back in where it really hit home for me was back in 2013, 2014, which actually feels like yesterday. Both of my maternal grandparents, they lived in separate houses, but it was a situation where my grandpa lives north of Chatteroy, and he was very determined to die on this pile of rocks out here. And about the same time, my grandma, who lived in the valley, had some health issues where we started having her into assisted living care. And at the time, so it was just me and my mom living here in the inland Northwest. Relatives were everywhere else. And so my mom started taking care of my grandpa. We were really, we thought we were doing all the great things and making his big bedroom suitable for him, so he could age in place. That was his goal. And, we did all the right things. So we thought, and then that man refused to use the bigger bedroom, the bigger bathroom. He wanted to be comfortable. And then my grandma, it was so quickly, a few months maybe after, where we were having her in assisted living, but she's a night walker. And her meds, they were trying to get her to sleep during the night, and quite frankly, she was having none of it. So we had to move around a couple places. And then finally my mom was like, I can't do this. I can't keep bouncing my mother around. So I have to take her into my house. And so my mom was, fortunately she lived fairly close to my grandfather, but she was taking care of both parents at the same time. She had to figure out how to get, my mom's about, we all tap out about 5'1", So my mom's trying to get her mom out of a wheelchair, maneuver her through a house, and that's where a lot of what can we start doing? And unfortunately my grandma at that point couldn't really speak. She had a stroke, so her communication was pretty null and void. My grandpa was very adamant. He could still speak pretty well, so he let us know quite, again, we tried to do all the wider bathrooms, but we had to just figure out for both people, how to age in place. But then you look at the other piece of it was my mom. And she had, because we didn't know about long-term care insurance at that point, where she could have been, if either one of the grandparents had that in place, where she could have gotten some training and some additional financial help. Because the burden of that, and then both, it just ate on her because, both grandparents in 2014 passed away 7 weeks from each other. Both of her parents, she's taking care of them, and that burden was amazing. You just see it on her face, even to this day, where again, it probably feels like it happened yesterday. And now coming full circle, I'm like, what's my 5-year plan? Oh shoot, I'm gonna be over 50. So what can I start doing in my own life? My sister's moving back, building her final home on my grandpa's property. And it's like, okay, we're going to plan for these. We're going to plan for the aging in place scenarios as much as we can. But there's so many obstacles to it, but it's what can you do now too? Yeah. Because it's not just for the elderly. That's the big thing. It's like anything can happen at any time. And some of the features, when I was reading through, they have a checklist for aging in place. And I'm reading through it, and some of the things, that's probably never going to happen in my existing house. Maybe if I was building new, that would be one thing. But it's like, oh, lever handles. It's on the checklist, but I'm like, I love them now. Now, where I'm looking at the big picture. But as we talked about,
right,
it morphs so much.
Totally.
There's so many pieces to this big term.
So getting the conversation started here, and one of the things that we try to focus on and is so hard to do. So I want to invite you into the fact that this is I'm asking you to do a hard thing, is this vulnerability piece. We all benefit from being a little bit vulnerable, hearing other people's vulnerabilities, and the actual step of doing it can be the really challenging thing. So what I want to kind of hear from folks in the room is any number of the things, but one of the questions is, what is the thing? And to be transparent, we talked about this. For me, it's writing a will. My wife and I have been talking, I'm 45, my wife and I have been talking about doing a will for long enough that it should be done, and it's not done. And now ChatGPT has come along, and I could literally compose my own will, bring it to a lawyer and be like, hey, look this over, make sure I'm good, and we're done, and still, so that's me being a little bit honest. You talk about directives and power of attorney.
It's the same thing. My other half and I have been together for 19 years. We're not married. I don't have a medical power of attorney. And all of that, if something should happen, neither one of us. So should something happen to either one of us, we don't have the legal right to make the call for each other. And, we were talking, and he has says to me, he's like, well, here's the problem. I want your mom to have to make that call. I don't want the burden. He's like, I don't want it. He's like, it just hurts me. So I actually, after our conversation, I went online and I actually found one that does have multiple.
Good.
So I okay, if you don't really want to make this call, I can put my sister on there. She is blunt as heck. And she will make the call. But, so I actually did make that first step if I have one downloaded and filled out.
Yeah. Which we had a little accountability agreement. You did your part, I did not do mine. I'm still coming to the table with some work that needs to be done. So the question would be what's something that you need to do and you haven't done it, so a little bit of a group accountability. or what is the thing that's keeping you from doing it? And so I kind of want to just jump into this sort of planning for this unpleasantness. What are the things that you're doing, or more specifically, the vulnerable piece? What are the things that you're like, man, I really need to find out more about how vulnerable my computer is, as an example?
Well, I was gonna jump in and offer the vulnerability because it happened to me today. So I have a POA for a friend who has no other children, and her family was not somebody she relied on, and she's now in a condition that she really can't communicate clearly. It's hard to have conversations with her, and now she's really upset with me because we reached a point where I couldn't do the things she wanted me to do for her, and now she's upset at me. And so I'm in a medical or a transporter van because she's in a wheelchair and we have to go to an appointment. And the driver and I, are trying to hold a conversation, and she's having a challenging day. And he looks over at me and just says, "So, do you have any children?" And I said, "No, I'm single." And the next thing he said is, "So what are you gonna do?" When, if something, and which for me is a double-edged sword, because in January I had a heart attack, and so I'm in recovery mode right now in my life. And yes, I have to make all these decisions, but some of it, it's the paperwork is usually easy. It's all the other impacts. I own my business. My customers are impacted. Who knows how to get into these resources? Who knows where all my legal documents are, and so on and so forth. So I actually do have a gal that I've worked with before who specializes in this, and she has actually produced a complete kit of everything you need, and it's available on Amazon. You just go and it takes you all the way through everything you need to plan.
Nice. Awesome.
Wow. Oh, I was gonna say that states are different, because my sister lives in California and I'm here, and she goes, I need I need a will, I need to know stuff like that. And I had bypass heart surgery, and at that time, that's when we needed it. So that was like almost 11 years ago or something. And we did it, and I just went online. I went to Google or something and looked up how to make a will, and it told me. And it said, certain things. But if you don't do certain things, the government comes in and just says, sorry, and I didn't understand, I don't understand any of that stuff. But it's very complex. And you mentioned, you kind of got into it, but then talking about Alzheimer's, dementia is so complex. I've had my parents, my mother went through that, and just different medication can cause so many problems. They can, like you said, she's a walker at night. What's that called? Sundowners or something? Yeah. Well, my mother did it because of medication. And when you change medication, they're almost a different person. And so you have to just be so careful with your elder people you're working with in what kind of medication do they need, and is this working properly? Are they not sleeping? Are they, doing things weird? It really affects your mind and as well as the Alzheimer's and dementia and everything. So I'm just throwing that out. Whatever you do, if you have older parents, start at the beginning and just say, what do you want? And if they tell, write a list or something and just start working on it, because before you know it, within months, they can just go way down, and they can't even you can't talk to them. It's that hard.
That's one of the big pieces that we were talking about, is really having the conversation earlier rather than later. And I know even with the last few events here, it's been that, having that conversation so with my grandpa, it was so much easier because we were, like, the whole family was really close to my grandpa. My grandma was just kind of like off in her own land for a long time. And so we weren't close, but we would have a lot of the conversations. So my grandpa, when he passed, was so much easier on the family because so many things were dialed in. But again, like for the aging in place piece, we just all kind of marched in like we knew how to take care of him, but we never asked him what his wants were. Even, as simple as the bedroom. He absolutely refused to go because he wanted that back space to be for when people came to visit him. And kind of, he wanted that space for them. And he's like, I absolutely refuse. And he, stubborn Southern man. But we had those conversations, and they don't have to be like a whole, intervention type setting of like, hey, we're going to sit down today and chat about all your wants and wishes when you kick off, or when you are here, because our bodies are staying way longer than our brains are at this point. But having those conversations in a fun environment, like we were playing cards, and my sister straight up, told my grandpa she was buying the property from him. She didn't really give him a choice, and he was like, well, what about, he's trying to be fair to everybody else, and she just didn't. They can't buy it. I can. So wow. She's like, I can afford it. They can't. So we're gonna have it, and it's gonna stay in the family. So, but again, it was very lighthearted, and having the conversations of, and he started to embrace it more, like realizing, so he would do things around even his property for us. Like almost reverse. So like, okay, I know I'm going to kick off and they're going to have the property. So what do I do to make it easy on them? So it was almost a reverse, but having those conversations, and they're hard. The first one's the hardest. It's like, I'm super passive aggressive. And so for me to start those conversations is hard, but they're so important. And because my grandma, we didn't have that conversation. And by the time, as you were saying, like she was kind of off, so it was very a delicate situation trying to get signatures because her mental state was deteriorating pretty rapidly. But we still had it because we didn't have those things in place. She didn't have a will. She had nothing. None of that, so having those conversations, those hard conversations early, and what you can do for yourself to help your loved ones. Me getting power of returns, taking care of me, will.
Gotta get there.
Have somebody schedule an appointment for you.
I'll say something.
Yeah.
Aaron Goforth, my cousin, does wills. He's here in Spokane.
Okay.
He's one of the top ones. He has like casinos that he handles and everybody big. So he's a great one if you need to do a will. One thing is my grandpa is a World War II vet. He's 101 right now. And my grandma's 90. They've been married for almost 70 years. And he got Parkinson's about 95. And in 95, he was still driving. At 90, he was still going on roofs in Orange County. And he crashed into the pillar that was in the garage. Anyone that knows anybody from military, you don't tell them what to do. If you were to tell my grandpa that, he would throw you out, probably. And so I've been around my whole life, and I told him, I was like, I knew that he crashed. I was like, Grandpa, how have you been? He's like, oh, I'm good. And everybody had been trying to tell him stop driving. But he needed to make that decision for himself. And so I said, Grandpa, how have you been? He's like, good. I'm like, okay, so what's new? He's like, oh, did I tell you I crashed into the pole? And I was like, no, Grandpa, you did? And he's like, yeah. He's like, I probably shouldn't be driving. I'm like, probably not. Stop driving. So I think like a lot of those things, like, it's just like sales that I handle every single day. Jonathan, same things. Like, you have to meet people where they're at. You can't always tell them, hey, you're going to do this. Because if you do that to someone like me, it's not going to work. You need to be able to read the room and make sure. But it's hard because if somebody's not going to re-roof at 60 or 70 years old, you're not going to really get them to do a will or to change their house. It's a lot of conversations, like I think you said, that are important. I had a friend too that her husband was a UCLA football player, kickoff returner, top running back in the country. And she was 40 years old, and they were both athletic, and she fell down the stairs, quadriplegic the rest of her life. Had to change everything. That's what I'm saying. It's like what you're saying is like, it happens like that, and it changes your relationships. It changes how you live and all those things, and it could happen to any of us.
Yeah.
You know.
That's why, like, in the planning with new home construction, you know, again, like, we're building my sister's house here next summer, and we're starting to plan for it, and she's still kind of in that, you know, I see some of the plans that she wants, and I'm like, you know, that's great for if you want guests, but you don't want guests in your house, so, we've got to really, we got to analyze this, you know, and let's, you know, make sure that we're putting blocking in for not just the bathroom, but in other areas, and, you know, make things that are cool, because not every grab bar has to be ridiculously look like it's institutional, like it came out of the hospital, but, you know, they have some really cool ones coming out now, and the more that builders start embracing, and manufacturers like Moen and Delta, they're making cooler grab bars.
Yeah.
So it's not like this big, sleek, ginormous, bulgy thing that's in your house. The more that we embrace that it's not just for people that are wheelchair bound too, because, I mean, you can simply trip, you know? I mean, most of us have been on crutches at some point in our life, you know, and it's just hard to maneuver. So looking at those different things and the home plans, like prepping for it, you know, whatever you can do.
Sorry. No. I was just talking with a client like 2 days ago, and we were talking about her mom, and her mom recently had a heart attack and is dealing with all the repercussions of that, and also just aging, and she does want to continue living in her home, and I'm working with her daughter, and her daughter is like, we were trying to convince her to like get new grab bars and handles and stuff, and she was like, she won't get them, partially because of cost, which is a big factor,
Yeah.
but then also she thinks it makes her house look different, and she just doesn't like it. So I'm actually working on a totally different project with her, but we were talking about this, and I'm like, there are lots of new like design decisions that are like, or opportunities that can make it look more beautiful, and I like sent her all these ideas of different like recessed handlebars and stuff like that instead, but their designs like your hands don't hit them on top and stuff like that. That way, not only, especially for the people right now, like who are like baby boomer age, stuff like that, who are like, I don't need that yet because I'm not old enough.
Yeah.
But it's like, how can we make it beautiful but also plan for the future, and also create a world where it's not like a ridiculous amount of money to have that safety in your future. I think that's a really important way for us to start viewing it and allowing other people to have that opportunity.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like the more that we can.
And caregiving is a huge problem.
Yes.
Because I had to stop work and take care of my mother since 1988.
Yeah.
Because my dad passed away. So I had to move in with my mom, and she would fall down and break a leg, or, you know, I mean, something would happen. And I had to work part-time, you know, but the caregiving is so expensive nowadays. Even have, like, for 4 hours, a person come in the morning and stay until noon or something. It's just, it's really difficult nowadays.
That's why, and I haven't dug into it a lot, but the long-term care insurance, where I with one of coworkers, New York Life, I was talking to her about this topic, and I said, why don't we talk about, you know, the long-term care insurance? I'm like, you hear about home, auto, and life. You hear about the after, you know, what happens to your family after you're gone, but like, there's so many times that, you know, again, paraplegic, like, they've got a long run, you know, things can happen so quickly that, and there's so many different options, and fortunately, with the one that I'm actually pursuing is if you don't use it, it actually does become a death payout, where a lot of them is don't, you know, use it or lose it.
Right.
And I was like, yeah. But, you know, again, it's like I'm knocking on 50's door, and I need to start thinking about these things for myself, because me and my other half, we don't have kids. Saying, you know, it's like there's nobody, and I don't really have a family. It's not like I have a bunch of people that I'm like, hey, take care of me when I'm old, please. And you know, so we have really had to like start. Like I have to work that into my budget. Like it just has to be. But I didn't really know much about it, and still don't. But you know, that's a big having those conversations, letting people know that such insurance exists, because it's not long-term disability insurance is what we're used to. It's not the same thing. So it's, and it's different than life insurance, but so it's to help cover those, potential in-home care or the pieces, because everybody's like, oh, Medicaid, Medicare, but you have to dwindle your assets to have half of that stuff. So there's so many components to the aging in place piece, but it's just thinking about it now so it's not so overwhelming, because it can be overwhelming, and that topic that you don't want to talk about. It's like, I'm invincible.
Yeah.
But
I was gonna say, just with kind of where things are going, a couple thoughts come to mind, because as far as what drives us to do our own thing, right? It's usually we've experienced something bad. Somebody experienced something. Now I have to step in and deal with it. So now I'm going to get my stuff together. That's what happened to my dad. My grandpa actually had his stuff set up fairly well, got some bad advice, and it just caused a headache for my dad. And so he spent years, even after my grandfather passed away, trying to sort through everything. So now I know my dad's stuff is like, he's all squared away. He had to deal with that. He's got it. So his kids don't have to worry about it. But I don't have that pain, so I haven't done that. But that also brought me to the point of like, yes, getting it set up is important, but the quality of what you set up is just as important. Like, we're talking about ChatGPT wills, but yeah, have it reviewed by an attorney. Don't just trust the online source. Like, make sure that what you're doing is legitimate and going to hold up.
Yeah, it has to be notarized and all kinds of stuff.
But doesn't that start really? I mean, we have a judge here, a former mayor. Thank you for your service here. It starts at the state and city, right? It starts with making those laws and implementing them, because California has actually, as much as I hate it, and that's why I left, there's a lot of politics, is they have things like Prop 13, I think it is, to where your mortgage, you don't pay any more on your property tax or anything like that if you're a certain age group when you bought in a certain time and you didn't sell your house, so it really helps them. Or they have rideshare programs built in, because that costs a lot of money for them as they're aging and going into those things, and having costs like those. I was trying to find out if there's any federal funding for, or state funding, whatever, for those chairs that lift up, because my grandpa's 101, and their stairs are like, I feel like I'm gonna fall over on it, and he died like a second. Yeah, he fell over 5 feet. But I think city and state level, if we can start moving that and making people aware of us, I think we do a really good job of caring about all these protected classes and sexes and all these things. But if we actually focus on everybody else that is all colors, that all age, and all go through these things, it's a lot better, because most of the people don't have money. Spokane, I grew up visiting here since I was a kid. Most of the people, it was a poor place. California has funded a lot of it, and other places, as well as a lot of people, Spokane has grown. But a lot of those people that have nice houses here bought them for 20, 60, 80,000, and they don't have money to spend on all these things.
When the state of Washington decided to put long-term care in process, among the many hats I wear, I worked with someone who needed it. And so I became an insurance agent because of this, because the money that the state takes out of people's paychecks, you only get $35,000 back, which is not a lot, as you know, if you use services, it goes in a blink.
Flash in the pan.
Yeah. So while the state was pushing that, they were allowing people to buy insurance that provided for long-term care. They unfortunately closed that window so that you have to take from the state, you can't get something else. But I worked with a number of insurance companies with what they have for long-term care. And the interesting thing is, like the policy you're talking about, is that you can get it and it can be then a benefit for when you die if you do not use it for long-term care. And this particular policy that I'm familiar with, the state only allows you to use the state money for certain types of conditions. This one has 16 different conditions that you can qualify under to take money out of the policy to pay for whatever type of thing. So it could cover heart attacks, it could cover cancer. Even though you could get cured, you could get money, you can take money out to pay for your treatment and do that kind of thing. And so If anyone is interested, I'm more than happy to sit down and talk to you, no charge, and tell you what's available out there for that type of thing, because I've done a lot of research on it. So.
That's a great offer.
Yeah, well, in addition to that, like you, I fell in with this lady who had no family, and she needed someone to look after her. And so I started in 2012 taking care of her. And then I discovered that, like you can't make decisions if you don't have some type of that. So I got a POA, and so I did medical and financial. In 2021, I took over her finances because she didn't want to have to pay her bills anymore, so I did that. And then she passed away. And here's an interesting thing that my friend, who happens to be an attorney, so he gives me nice free advice, is when person passes, you have to put a notice in the paper that they passed away, and if anybody has any claims on their estate, they have a 4-month period to do it. And I didn't think about it, but she died the end of January, and the 4-month period, because we had to wait and get it published in the newspaper, and they did it wrong, so I had to do it again. So the end of it is going to be the 14th of July. So I was talking to my attorney, and I said, I haven't gotten her hospital bill yet. She was in the hospital for 28 days. I got a bill, I got an insurance form that said it was $223,000 for her. And so I said to him, I haven't gotten anything from the hospital yet for a bill. He says, when you hit that day, 14th of July, and you haven't got the bill, they no longer have a claim, and they can't, you don't have to pay them.
Wow. That's good to know.
Yeah, that's an interesting fact for you to be aware of, the fact that once you publish it in the paper, the state says they have 4 months to make a claim on the person's estate, and if they don't do it, then they have no recourse, and they can't take any money away from them.
Well,
You should just know that little fact, just in case.
Well, and it's interesting as this conversation, and I was thinking about whether we should pivot into this. It's definitely murky water, right? It gets into politics, it gets into a lot of things, but we're talking on an individual level. What should I be doing? What should you be doing to plan for your future? What are the conversations? That's super important aspect, and why I would be hesitant to pivot into the more group dynamic. But the reality is that we have an aging population. We have, I heard a statistic that I haven't verified, but I've heard that there's more people alive today than have died ever.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
wow.
And I don't know if that was like from 2019 and now that's changed, but I do know that there's some fascinating things that happen with numbers that I'm into math. I like that kind of stuff. But like, it is something that I think we need to kind of sober-mindedly look at, is like, we have an aging population, and maybe half, maybe the majority, maybe even if it's a minority, there's a lot of people that don't have a plan, that don't have a Rob, or I forgot your name, Diana, that aren't, they're by themselves. And well, what obligation do we as a society have to help them in the situation that they're in?
Because one of the other things that's happened in that time period, so when the U.S. was founded, it really was family based. Everything was about multi-generational family environments. Today we're almost, it feels more and more like we're exclusively, everybody get out, in fact it's almost a joke or a pejorative term to talk about, Gen X, Gen Z, millennials living with their parents until they're, that's just, this is a horrible thing. And yet, go back and, look at the Waltons, that had 4 or 5 generations all living in the same space. And we're scattering all of that. So it will be an issue ongoing that we have to address as a civil society. What do we do in these circumstances?
Yeah.
If I may add as well, I was previously a Medicare advisor before coming into this role, and that was one of the larger concerns. Is there's a people that were applying for Medicaid. If you don't know what Medicaid is, the way I remember it is it's kind of like the state's dire need of assistance. You know, you have to be under a certain income limit and not be gaining any income in other areas, but if you have one primary residence, you qualify for it. I was denying people. I wasn't denying people. I was helping them apply, but I was having to tell them that they were denied. And it was really hard just because, you know, they're making sense more than what would qualify them. And the people that did have a certain amount of assets, like I was talking to a gal that had like $25,000 that she's trying to squirrel away for her grandchildren. And in those scenarios, you have to do this thing called spend down in order to be able to get to that point where you can qualify for it. And I wish I knew this at the time, but there's ways you can still squirrel that money away or spend some money without necessarily having to, you know, spend it all on things that you won't ever use again. You can make gifts or for your family members, but it's really hard to have those conversations. To circle back to what you were saying, John, a little bit of vulnerability for me is last year we found out that my grandmother was diagnosed with like, I don't know, it's like early onset dementia, I believe that is, and we had tried to kind of build in the habit to start calling her and checking up on her, and we could tell that she wasn't really in the same space of mind because she would confuse me with other family members, and it was really hard to be able to get to the point where I can have a complete conversation without having to repeat a lot of the same things. She was depending on her husband, my grandfather, and he is getting to the point where he can't really do as much. And he didn't tell us about it because we're over here in Washington, they're in California, but he had a stroke. And he didn't want anybody to know that he was in a hospital for days. And I'm thinking, okay, me and my family are up here. He does have family down there, but who do you depend on? You know, if your family is dealing with issues about, you know, with their memory, not being able to take their medications, and you're having your own heart issues, it's, you know, you're having to either pay out of pocket or really rely on somebody else. And unfortunately, if you don't have family, it's hard to rely on anybody.
Well, definitely having those conversations with, because I honestly didn't even think about it when we were having our conversation, that my sister and I are actually, we've been starting to have the conversation. My mom lives in Iowa now, but I mean, she's 70-some, and like when we talk to her, we're like, we're not sure, you know, like, and she's very adamant about, I mean, she's like, I do not want to go out like my mom did, or, you know, but my sister and I are having the conversation of like, who's going to take care of mom? Because, yeah, and I don't, like, I own my shortcomings. I'm not a great caregiver. Like, you know, it's like, I know that, like, because it changes a dynamic. And because, again, I watched it with my grandpa, like, the minute my mom and I had to start taking care of him at all, with, like, changing his dressing on his foot, like, he was downhill. Like, he's like, I'm out. Like, but, you know, having those conversations with your family, because it's almost like, with my mom, because she was here, it was just automatically expected. She's taking care of both of them. But there was no conversation with the other, you know, her 3 other brothers, because they didn't live here. One was in Arizona and in Colorado, and my sister was in New Orleans. Like, it was just assumed, you know? So, like, how, again, going back to those conversations of, how do you prepare now?
It's worth it to be, like, have 30 minutes of stress for a lifetime of, you know, planning to be able to have that, which is hard because I have friends that just don't even want to think about anything. They don't want to overstress about anything. They're not gonna, they'd rather hide the conversation or trump it and go on to something else. But you know, it's worth it to be stressed out than to have to be really stressed in a situation where you can't even have the conversation.
Yeah, because when you're in that moment, like you're grieving. I think that's what my mom went through. She was, you know, she's grieving the loss of her dad while taking care of her mom, who we know has, you know, and then 7 weeks later she's gone, you know, so it's all the grieving part. So your brain is not in the headspace anyway to be having to deal with all of these other issues that come into play. So the more that you can do to help your loved ones, even for, like, again, your own self, is better, and having those conversations. So like you said, 30 seconds.
Yeah. Sorry, I wanted to add on to that, and Jonathan, you mentioned this before with multi-generational housing. You look at like places like Hawaii or Japan, and they're Hawaii, like over 70, I might be messing up my statistics here, but it's like over 70% of them are doing multi-generational housing. And there specifically, they do live with like their interpersonal family. But then you look at Japan and stuff like that where, I think it's like oh my God, so many statistics.
Big number.
Yeah, exactly. But a large number of, the population of Japan is over the age of 65, right? And they're trying to come up with all of these different solutions on how to do that. And I think we need to start gearing it towards not multi-generational with your own family, but just intergenerational with like anyone. So, and I mean, you can look at it as like a regular apartment building, like obviously lots of different age groups live within there, but the difference is the intergenerational housing is where maybe your living quarters are a little bit smaller, but you have all these communal spaces that you do share. And I think like obviously America is not on that boat right now, but like if we do gear it towards that, it's changing the mentality of not only does that help the older generation because then they have other people there watching them, taking care of them, but then the younger people, if they have kids, can you watch my kid for a little bit so I can go take a nap? Can you watch my kid so I can run to the store? Like all of those types of things. And then not only that, then you have like a whole group of a community of kids that can maybe walk to school together. You know, maybe you take turns on like who's cooking every week or something like that. So I think when we start changing the mindset towards how can we as a community become a better community, whereas I think right now, like a lot of America's like, I like my space, I like my 3 acres of land, I like my 8 cars, like all of those types of things. I mean, don't get me wrong, we don't have to go as like extreme. There's this one building in Japan where they designed it so I think it's called half house, something like that, and basically half of the building is your house, and you literally just have like your toilet, your like a sink, not even like a full kitchen, and then it's basically a studio apartment. But then the other side of the building is all communal. So, but like there, the mentality has already been that, so they're so okay with that, but they're not as materialistic as we are. So I think it's just like all of these different mindsets change, and I'm not saying that, we have to like do a complete 180 right now, but I think it's gradually figuring that out. And I do know this statistic is true. 100% of baby boomers are going to be over the age of 60 in less than 2 years. So it's just like, a lot of people don't think they're in that realm, and 60 is not old, but it's like you got to start thinking about things, and you have to start thinking about
the reactions to that around the room.
So my mom is 60. She just turned 64, and I just turned 24. And my mom came to me yesterday, and she's like, "Grace, I have this book for you," and I'm like, "Okay." And it's like this thick book called like My Life on it, and it literally has like all of her passwords, like all of her not telling anyone where I live, so yeah, exactly. But it's like where all the stuff is, and like me, I'm like I real quick, I have single mom, only child, so it's just the two of us. My last grandparent just died a couple weeks ago, so like it's just us now. So she's like, "Grace, you gotta know this stuff," and I'm like, "You're not dying for at least another 20 years, so like we're not gonna talk about this, right?" But she's like, "No, but you at least need to know like where to find this stuff." And she's like, "Okay, it's going in the safe." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." She's like, "Grace, do you know the password to the safe?" And I'm like, "No." She's gonna like shoot it or something to get it open. But it's like all of these different things, right? So going back to the intergenerational thing, it's not like you have to give all those people all of that information, but it's about having a community of who's going to be there to support you. And then also, I have a very similar background as you do, which I'm sure, Rob, I don't know if you told her. Same thing, in 2012, we moved in with my grandpa, and we took care of him. And my mom didn't quit her job, but it did become like a big, I don't know, I feel like burden's really hard, because like, I don't want to use that word, but it was a big thing that happened, and I was 11 at the time. So just seeing, my grandpa was a firefighter chief. He was like this great, like amazing strength and all that. And then within 2 years, he couldn't go to the bathroom on his own. He couldn't do all this, and it's like that's a lot of weight for 1, 2, 5 people. Even if you have 5 kids, it's a lot of weight for you to carry. So it's like even if they're not maybe going to be your POA or whatever, but just a group of people who can help take that weight, just like on the daily sense, can be really significant in the long run. So
thank you for allowing me to come. I heard about this group, of course, through Lisa, and I have another appointment I need to get to, but I will leave my card here. If anybody's interested in talking about the insurance portion of it, I'm more than happy to talk to you. There's no charge for it. We can sit over, give me a cup of coffee, sit over and have a coffee, and I can explain to you the processes and the things that you need to look for if you're doing that. So, but it's nice to have met all of you, and I'll look forward to meeting you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
I'll just leave my card, and if you want, give me a call.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
We're actually going to segue to wrapping up. I want to introduce next week's guest in a second. I also want to just really quickly, with what you were saying, Grace, I think it's a good tie-in. I wanted to bring this to something that we talked about. And Rob and I were actually talking about this before anybody else got here. There's this tendency to pick up other people's, I'll say, assumptions or agreements or offenses, and kind of just like, I'm assuming that my parents want this because this is what everybody wants. And Matthew, you're talking about the spend down. And I know growing up, that was something that my parents were extremely fearful of, right? Like, oh, we want to be able to pass on to our kids. And the reality is that as fluid as we all are, as a society, we're not rigidly, the Japanese culture is a great example of like, it is very rigid. It is what it is, has been for generations. We're not. We are a combination of all kinds of things. And so the big takeaway we keep coming back to is have that conversation with your loved one and kind of set aside any preconceived things that you might bring to it and say, what matters to you? And Heather and I were talking about it, and I realized I don't even know what's important to me. I mean, I could spiel off some things that I think are important to me, but I haven't sat quietly with my own self and said, what do I want to happen if I get disabled? What do I want to have happen when I pass? And there's some things my wife and I have talked about that we do know, we have agreement on, but there's a lot of like that bigger, what do I want out of this period of time that I get on this spinning globe, that I just need to kind of sit quietly and figure out what is it that I want to see happen? What do I want passed down? Those kind of things. And on the subject of passing down, our next week, our conversation is going to take a radical right-hand turn. And we're going to talk about the younger generation. And so give us a quick tease about, and I mean, when I say quick, like Mike's going to start talking in about a minute. So a minute with Lisa Miller. You guys have 60 seconds.
60 seconds.
Yeah.
I'll try not to do 2.5 minutes.
Five examples.
Five examples. Yeah, we're seeing just after COVID especially, we're really seeing a huge marked rise in youth mental health challenges, right? And it's greatly impacting this generation of youth that we as adults are serving, right? And again, I know not to belabor the point that children are the future, but children are the future, right? And so what can we do now to help them, equip them to be better adults in the future? And one of the things that we're losing youth to right now is suicide. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for youth ages 10 to 17 in the state of Washington right now, followed by accidents first accidents, then suicide, and then homicide by firearms. So it's a really big thing that's happening in Washington and in Spokane. And suicide does not discriminate. It is something that probably all of us have experienced, whether it is, someone who is a child or an adult, right? I think we've all been marked by the experience of, even knowing someone who's lost their life to suicide. And so Hope Squad is just a really great program that helps equip our youth with those coping skills and those skills to help deal with life and to help them connect with each other. We're living in a generation that is completely ruled by social media and by online. Like the ChatGPT comment was funny to me, thinking about that as an adult now. I use ChatGPT at work, but to do some things, right? But and I spend way too much time on social media. But I'm an adult who can help make those decisions for myself. And we really need to equip youth to be able to engage with each other in real life.
Yeah, and when kids are in middle school, high school, they really start to like turn away from adults for help and they start to turn towards each other. So really Hope Squad is about getting those peers to be able to recognize warning signs of suicide and then reach out and be like, hey, I noticed you're struggling, let's go get you some help and refer out. So that's what's really cool about it, is we're putting kids like in the ground and out in the field to help with other kids. And so it's been actually really special this year to see that come to life.
All right, Mike, before you do, Heather, thank you so much. Great topic, appreciate it. And Reese and Kirsten, looking forward to having you guys next week. And I know, well, he might not mention, so Action Business Furniture, come check them out. Come see us next week. We'll be here Friday from 3 to 4. 4, is that right? 3 to 4. 3 to 4. Mike, take us away.
I hear none of us are getting out of this life alive. That's why you should like and subscribe. And just like all the young kids say, they say fam, YOLO, they say fire, and vibes and bay. And you guys should comment your favorites in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye!